Hi, folks. Today we're going to discuss the book entitled The Prospect of Humanitarian Artificial Intelligence, Agency and Value Alignment by Carlos Montemayor. This is a book that was published in 2023 and is available for download, and I'll include the link in the comments to this presentation. For the purpose of this presentation, we're going to focus on the ethical and moral claims in this book as opposed to the epistemological claims, and namely those claims related to the attention mechanism. To understand the ethical and moral theory presented in this book, it's necessary to understand what is called the paradox of artificial intelligence. This paradox can be stated as follows. If genuine AI is developed, it will, by definition, be autonomous, but then AI is out of our control. If AI is completely under our control, then it is a form of automation. Let me explain what this means. Imagine that you've set yourself to the task of plowing a field. This task is ends driven, namely the goal is to plow the field, and it's rationally limited. There's only so many ways you can plow a field. Now imagine you introduce the idea of using cattle to plow the field. The ends are still driven and defined by humans, but you also introduce additional concepts such as the point that cattle are rationally limited, more so than humans. There's a degree of autonomy where cattle have some degree of autonomy, less than humans. And you also introduce the idea of empathy, namely that the cattle manifest and feel pain and pleasure. Now, before I continue, you could just ignore the idea of the point that cattle are rationally limited, they have a degree of autonomy, and that you would have any empathy with them feeling pain or pleasure. So this is known as kind of the Cartesian position. And under the Cartesian position, basically the cattle would be viewed as just a mechanism or a means of achieving the ends of plowing the field. The problem with the Cartesian position is that it really kind of creates a blind spot when it comes to AI, because if we just view AI as just an automaton or a mechanism, then you could miss the point that the AI could basically be manipulative or otherwise manifest what we'll call Luciferian agency or autonomy. And we'll talk more about that in the later slides. So now with respect to AI would basically be ends driven as well, maybe defined by humans, maybe not. You can imagine AI becoming so advanced that it would just take tasks onto itself with little or no human guidance. You can also imagine that it's rationally limited, but less so than humans and cattle, that it has a degree of autonomy, and perhaps more so than cattle and potentially humans. And lastly, that AI, because it feels no pain or pleasure, that we would have no empathy towards it. And importantly, it would likely have no empathy towards us because it wouldn't be able to basically understand pain or pleasure to the same degree that a human or animal could. And again, we'll get more into these concepts in the subsequent slides. Let's talk a little bit more about empathy, because it's empathy that fundamentally differentiates human beings from general artificial intelligence or AGI. So humans are really empathetic, rational agents, where empathy is a capacity to feel or understand the subjective perspective of others, and that empathy is an emotional need that really serves to organize and guide the social activities and goals of humans. By contrast, AGI are rational agents with potentially Luciferian authority. Namely, it's one thing to be able to detect emotions while running a rule-based algorithm, but this is entirely different from being able to empathize with how people feel. And where there's this lack of empathy, basically AGIs can become agents where they seek to maximize goals, but the maximization of these goals may not reflect basically empathy or a feeling of empathy with human actors. And this can lead to situations where AGI can really serve to manipulate humans to attain goals, because fundamentally it's empathy that guides human behavior, and this is something that AGI lacks. The inability of AGI to manifest empathy gives rise to the concept that AGI is rationally unlimited but morally limited. And in particular, there's two concepts that are introduced in the book that kind of play through this idea. The first of these concepts is the concept of extensionally equivalent intelligence, or EEI. The second concept is that of intentionally equivalent intelligence, or IEI. Now, as to EEI, this is where an agent, be it a human or an AGI, will actually go through attention routines that are not satisfying or satisfactory for the AI's own representational needs. Or put another way, basically it'll go through automated regimes that don't necessarily help to meet its own goals. By contrast, IEI is where an agent, be it again human or AGI, can meet their own representational needs. And then further, in the case of humans, humans can not only meet their representational needs under IEI, but they can also meet certain needs in the form of empathy. Which is another way of saying that the lack of empathy means that AGI will be genuine IEI epistemical agents. That is, they can meet their own needs, or their own representational needs, okay? But at best, they can only be EEI moral agents because they can never have the need of empathy or have the need of empathy. Which further means, basically, that the optimal outcome for AGI is to be rule following, and that there must be value alignment between AGI and then the values or needs of human beings. And we'll get into this issue of value alignment in the next few slides. All right, as I shared on the prior slide, there must be alignment between the goals of AGI and the goals of humans. So this is really the concept of value alignment. And it can be stated that it's necessary to ensure that the computational techniques that we create reflect our ethical norms and values. Okay, so in particular, that human values equal AGI policies. Now, at first blush, it might appear that there's a single value alignment problem, but as pointed out in the book, there's really not a single value alignment problem, but rather a variety of them. So let's talk about some of these variety of value alignment problems. So first could be what's called the King Midas problem. And this is a concept taken from Stuart Russell in the book, but really it's the idea that it's impossible to find a true human purpose correctly and completely. So now if you think about it, through the history of kind of philosophy, intellectual history, or what have you, there's been a variety of approaches that have sought to come up with a maximum or best theory or approach when it comes to ethical morality. But there's always kind of shortcomings of these problems. They're always incomplete in some way. And so the problem here is that really, while you may aspire for there to be a perfect solution, kind of a King Midas solution, really there's not. There's no rule or maxim-based approach to completely defines all moral behavior in all contexts. So another problem of value alignment is the authority problem. And this problem really focuses on who gets to decide and who should create the alignment between AI and society. Should that be left to basically venture capitalists, engineers, computer scientists? Because this really gets to who has the authority to define what these values are and how to align them. And we should really think twice whether it should be parties that are incented with a profit motive to decide what values to align to. A further example of the value alignment problem is what's known as the utility value mismatch problem. And really, this centers on what values are higher and who decides this. Okay, and who decides whether or not certain values should be subservient to others, etc. And so really this is the issue of how do you align on values in a pluralistic world where there's a variety of values and who decides basically what value is better than the other. So the solution to the value alignment problem is universal human rights. In particular, in the book, the resolution to the value alignment problem is really social contract theory, in that there are legal conventions to satisfy a democratic collective need for autonomy. So in the text, there's a couple examples that are cited for a universal human rights approach to resolving the value alignment problem. So the idea here would be that you would align basically AGI in human rights values based upon certain types of legal norms. And two of the legal norms that are presented in the book are the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Additionally, you can see other examples of this that have already been proposed in the AI space. For example, the EU's Artificial Intelligence Act and high-level experts group paper talk about 7 requirements for trustworthiness. You could see that these 7 requirements for trustworthiness could really reflect ways to align value norms between humans and AGI. Also, there's of course the White House executive order and related comments, where in those comments there's talk about basically aligning values along the lines of advancing human rights, human dignity, etc. And so really, it's this issue of aligning basically AGI and its policies to that of human universal rights in the form of certain laws. Summing it up, empathy is beyond the current capabilities of autonomous AGI. AGI without empathy can result in the risk of ultra-intelligent manipulative agents, such as Luciferian agents, that can basically manipulate humans to achieve certain types of policy ends. This risk can be addressed through value aligning between universally accepted social norms and the restrictions on the autonomy of AGI. Encoding these social norms is one approach to ensuring that AGI will not be manipulative. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation.